Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff.
Space shuttle spreads its wings one final time for the start of a sentimental journey into history.
Hey, thank you. I have done this one time before in my dream. And this is the time I got up. And you ever frozen? It froze. And everybody was like, what is wrong with this guy? And then I woke up. So Yellowship is already better than I could have dreamed. Because I'm feeling good. I'm feeling loose. Thank you all for coming. We've been working on this for about a year. And if you wouldn't have shown up, it wouldn't have been worth it. So thank you. My job is to kick things off and basically set the stage for why Yellowship exists and what we're going to be learning for the next day and a half. So I'd like to do that right now. I've been really interested in this concept of multiple discovery for the past couple months. I kind of go from topic to topic. I get really excited, then I get really bored, and I move on to the next one. Multiple discovery has kind of been the recent one that I've dug. If you've never heard of multiple discovery, it's what happens when two independent parties, they're usually researchers or scientists, go out to solve the same problem without any knowledge of the other person or team working on it. They go underground, they work for weeks, for months, for years, and they pop back up at about the same time, which is the coolest part. And they go, I've got it. They have a eureka moment. And whatever they've got, whatever that eureka is, turns out to be the same thing. Solving the same problem, finding the same answer, independent of one another, no collaboration, no communication. I find that to be really neat because I like the kind of truth behind two people not working together and figuring the same stuff out. I'm sure they don't love it after years of hard work when they're like, oh, you too? You know, that's probably a bummer for them. But it's neat for us because it speaks to something super important happening. When Alexander Graham Bell patented the telephone, he did so 2 hours before a gentleman named Elisha Gray. 2 hours. Same day they went to the patent office. Same thing happened with René Descartes and a gentleman named Pierre de Fermat. They both discovered analytic geometry in the same year. Geometry had been around them for their entire lives, been around all of their predecessors their entire lives, but they understood the concepts and the fundamentals. And they figured them out in the same year. And you know, this is a debated part of multiple discovery, but I'm pretty sure when Deep Impact and Armageddon came out, that was also the case. I mean, look at the cover art. Both the teams were just on top of it. But in all seriousness, when the desire for something becomes better, or when the desire for something better becomes so strong, this is how multiple discovery folks describe it. When the needs become so great all at once, we cannot help but pursue and tackle these new ideas. I find that to be super neat. And I bring it up today not because multiple discovery is what we're going to talk about, but because recently there was a multiple discovery that I want you all to know about. Recently, two independent parties sought to answer the same question, and it's an important one that we should all care about. That question is, what makes a great team? So just about 4 years ago, 2 independent groups sought to answer this question, and they went about it in wildly different ways. The first one was embedded in a 60,000 person enterprise. So they had thousands of teams at their disposal. It was like the perfect petri dish for this question. Why do some teams perform better than others? And why do some teams fall? The other one had to be a little more creative. The second party, they were not embedded in a 60,000 person organization. They had to find teams that had already proven themselves to be high performing and interview them. And they found some really neat ones. This is a gang of jewelry thieves that Interpol describes as the Pink Panthers. Pretty brutal, right? But a pretty darn good team. They went 14 countries and $500 million in jewelry heists without so much as a bust. How do they do it? That's what the second party sought to find out. Ultimately, some of them did get caught, so he got to interview those folks. But Interpol would like you to believe that you can never make it as long as these folks did, doing what these folks did without getting caught, and clearly that wasn't the case. They also interviewed airline crews. So when bad things happen in the air, some pilot crews with ground control make it work, even when the statistics say that they shouldn't be able to make it work. He wanted to find out what was happening when that occurred. They also looked at restaurants. Certain restaurants buck the trend. They stay relevant, they stay high performing over decades and decades and decades. And then there were also kind of the usual suspects. Navy SEALs, we get it. You guys are good. Interviewed them, let's see, basketball teams, sports teams, the usual suspects. So what did they find? What makes a great team? The kind of usual suspects are pay people the most, that'll do it. Or, find the most educated people. Find the people with the longest tenure. Find the people who are in maybe a given location that's more inspiring. Or just find the dog lovers. If you guys are dog lovers, you put a group of dog lovers together, they probably believe they can do anything. Because they're so confident in their love for dogs that everything else will be fine. But it turns out none of these things were what either of these independent research teams found. After about 4 years of work, they found the number one determinant for a high-performing team is psychological safety. And you felt psychological safety on your team if you've ever pushed back on somebody who's had an idea, and that person who had that idea was paid more than you or outranked you or had a longer tenure than you. And you pushed back because you were like, I just want to do good work. The way people describe psychological safety is, it is what happens when we're able to put our insecurities and our fears aside and just get to work. And think about how many times a day you probably don't say something because you're like, I don't know how that's going to make me look. Or I don't want it to come off the wrong way. Teams with high degrees of psychological safety are less worried about how they look and more worried about doing great work together. So what they end up doing is they iterate really fast. They're able to work through half-baked ideas and get to really good ideas quickly because they don't let the first person who threw the first thing out anchor them and say, well, all right, well, let's go. I guess that's what we have to do now. They're able to, through that iteration, take bigger risks. Think about how scary it is if you're like, yeah, I'll throw that out there, and then if we do it and it doesn't work, everybody's going to point at me. But it's not so scary when you throw something out there and you say, the team goes, we're going to do that, we're going to do that together, we're going to lock arms. And if it doesn't work out, it's because we didn't work out. It's not any single individual. We're not worried about status and stature with psychological safety. We're worried about doing good work. Last week, one of our newest teammates, when I was doing the rough draft of this with them, he joined the team, salesperson, been in the team about 6 months, came up and said afterward, slow down, because I talk really quickly. And I thought that was a really good rendition of psychological safety because that person didn't know me that well, but they wanted this to go well. So they put together maybe their insecurities and their fears aside, and they helped me. And I'm reminded to slow down right now because of that person. So thank you. Thank you, Brian Ellis, very much. So who were these researchers and what else did they learn? We have Julia Rosofsky. I didn't tell you that Google was a 6,000 person organization because I didn't want you to go, of course it was. But they were. And they still found some really, really neat things over the 3 years, and Julia led the way. Then there was Daniel Coyle. He had a smaller independent team, and he wrote a book called The Culture Code about what he learned. Julia published her stuff, Daniel published theirs. So what else did they learn? What else was the overlap in terms of what makes a great team? 2 other things that they found in common. Psychological safety is 1. Number 2 is purpose. You've heard of purpose before. This is the why, right? Why do we do what we do? Who do we do it for? Why do they matter? And when it comes to my job in the company, how do I impact that why? Purpose is one we probably thought would be the highest determinant because it gets talked about quite a lot. Next thing, structure and clarity. I was so pumped to see this one on the list. Because structure and clarity is all about understanding how the organization works, who does what are the departments, how does my team work? Am I clear on what's expected of me and my team? Do I know how to do it? Training software. That's what this does. So I was pumped to see it on the list, and I promise we didn't fudge these numbers. So why am I talking about psychological safety, purpose, and structure and clarity at a training software conference? Well, Yellowship is not about training software. It's about doing better work. And clearly these are great ingredients for doing better work. The neat thing for us is, and I know many of you too, is you felt these things be true long before any researchers came up and said, Eureka. You've seen teams, high-performing teams, and you've seen what was special about them. You've seen these ingredients. So the nice part is, it's just validation that what we were already onto, we got some data behind it now. Somebody can go, I don't believe you, and I can say, I don't care. Excuse me. We got some speakers today, Jay Baer being the first one. He's going to take us through a lot of different elements of psychological safety. He's going to take us through purpose. He's going to take us through structure and clarity in his own way. Jay's going to talk about hugging your haters. When we think about haters, these are the people who don't love what we're doing. Often your instinct is to go, I don't want to listen to them, because we like to be validated, not invalidated. Jay's going to teach us why that might not be the best call, and why it can be a really good call to bring your haters into your fold and to hug them. Maybe not physically, but metaphorically. It depends, you got to ask. Then there's Kyle Maynard. He's going to close out today. Kyle's all about purpose. Kyle's all about looking at a challenge and finding an opportunity in it. A lot of us look at challenges and we just default to this is a setback. Not Kyle. He's going to tell us how he found his purpose, and he's going to tell us how he helps other people find theirs. Then tomorrow morning we have Dr. Jill Bolte-Taylor. She's been studying the brain for 30-plus years. And then one day in 1996, she had a stroke. And she had to study the brain in a whole new way when her own brain generally failed on her. She had to come back from that. And what she learned about her left brain and her right brain, it wasn't the creative and the analytical. It was much bigger than that. And she's going to teach us tomorrow how we can use our own brains, make them more of our allies than our enemies. I don't think we realize how much control we have over our brains, and Jill is going to help us see how much control we have over our brains. And then Aaron Gruel is going to close things out tomorrow. If you're like, look, I get it, psychological safety, purpose, structure and clarity, all good, but not in my organization, not in my group. It's way too dysfunctional. This isn't going to work for me. Wait till you hear the organization that Aaron Gruel walked into. Wait till you hear the team that she walked into, and then tell me that you can't do it. That's how we're going to close out tomorrow. I definitely believe you can do it, and after you listen to her, I'm sure you're going to believe it too. Then we have breakouts. 9 of them today, 6 of them tomorrow. I want to thank all of our breakout speakers and our keynote speakers for coming. So we've talked about psychological safety. Now I want to talk about purpose. When we started Lessonly, Mitch Causey joined the team. He was our first marketing leader, and he was like, well, what's our why? We didn't even have 8 clients. So I was like, not sure. He's like, well, that's what I need to do my best work. And I was like, you're going to have to wait, because I don't want to guess. I don't want to make something up and have to maybe make it work later, have to validate it later. I just want to actually figure out our why by building a bigger base of clients to figure out why we do what we do. So Mitch gave me 20 months, and he did some work in between then. And we figured out that our why is we help people do better work so they can live better lives. And the neat thing is what we found is when people bought Lessonly and used it, people incrementally did better work, and sometimes they did, in big ways, better work. And we knew that when you do better work, you take that home with you. Have you ever had a good day at work? How's your home life after that? Have you ever had a not great day at work? How's your home life after that? We love that we can impact in small and large ways what somebody takes home with them. Sometimes it's a bigger paycheck. Sometimes it's just a bit more levity, a little more pep in their step. We think that's really cool. Yellowship is a time, though, when we would like to move on from this being a mission, and we would like to turn it into a movement. And the ideas of psychological safety, the ideas of purpose, the ideas of structure and clarity, I hope we all walk out of here and feel inclined to do better work. There's never been a better time to do better work. We're 100 years into work, and 2 groups decided we should figure out how to do this better. We don't really know, so let's figure it out, and now we do know, so let's do it better together. When it comes to purpose, we're always looking for ways to expand our purpose. This is the Indianapolis skyline for all of you who came far and wide. I believe we have something from the Netherlands here, and I appreciate that a lot, by the way. So if you've never seen this before, I'm not surprised, but if you have seen it before, it's the beautiful Indianapolis skyline. When we look to extend our purpose, continue to grow and find new ways to impact people, the coolest thing about what's happened with Lessonly is now we have 500 clients. We have a big business, 100 people in that team. That to me is a big business. I'd never worked for a company before that was anything this size. And because of that scale, because you've all trusted us and invested in us, we now get to do neat new things for our community. We believe that there's a kid in need, if there's a kid who deserves a new experience, we should help them, and we should probably start here. So I'm really pleased to announce today that we are launching the Brighter Indianapolis Fund. This is an annual fund where we select 4 local Indianapolis nonprofits who are focused on giving kids new experiences. And they're focused on youth who may have never gotten those experiences before, so they can experience new things. We're donating 1% of our revenues this year to these 4 nonprofits. It's a big deal to them, and it's a big deal to us, and we did it with you. So I'd just like to thank you very much right now for all of your help getting the Brighter Indianapolis Fund together. I'm not going to preview all these organizations right now. Instead, if you subscribe to my weekly email, I'll give you some updates on how these things go. I send out an email every week if you ever want to read it. You can just sign up at the bottom of Lessonly.com. If you don't, that's no problem either. And you can always unsubscribe. I never check who unsubscribes because that would hurt me. So I just leave that. I'm just like, nobody unsubscribes. They're all open rate is 100%. Some folks asked, hey, I'd like to give more than just my Lessonly contribution to the Brighter Indy Fund. I want you to know that that is not necessary. But some folks asked, hey, wouldn't it be neat if we put something together where you could text to give during Yellowship? Again, by simply supporting Lessonly, by being a customer of Lessonly, by working along with us, you already support the Brighter Indianapolis Foundation. But if you'd like to, feel free. Okay, psychological safety, purpose, structure, and clarity. Let's talk about the last one. I'm going to shift gears here because one of the things that you've asked for in the big way around structure and clarity is, when it comes to Lessonly, how do I know how I'm doing? A lot of you run training programs. A lot of you want to help people do better work. So we thought it was our obligation to bring you more structure and clarity around how to do that. We're nearly 6 years into this business, 6 years in July. So it's about time we come out with a nice little method for you all. Historically, we've talked about learn, practice, and perform. But now we're taking the idea of learn, practice, and performing. We're kind of adding some more clarity to it around the better work method. I'd like to tell you how it works right now. And I think you can apply this not just to training, but other parts of your business. But I really hope it's helpful. And there's a lot of people in this room, shout out to our customer advisory board, who helped us make this possible. So once again, so much co-creation. Again, learn, practice, and perform. There's things that go around this. We've added 3 additional steps to the first 3 to bring more clarity. We call it the better work method, and it starts out with assessments. This is about taking the lay of the land in your organization. It's talking to managers, but it's also talking to frontline contributors. And ideally, if you have the right level of psychological safety, people are opening up and saying, I'm nervous about X, or I need help with Y, or oh my gosh, if we don't get Z looking better, it's bad. Once you get that lay of the land, you bring it all together, you figure out what is the metric that would indicate success if we were to advance against these needs. And then you move on to planning. This is when you take all of the potential inputs, all the potential things you can work on, and you pick one of them. And you say, here's how we're going to structure this training program. Is it a big behavior change? Does it just need 1 or 2 lessons? Big behavior change would require a lot more than 1 or 2 lessons. So is it big behavior change, like big old learning paths, a lot of practice scenarios, instructor-led training, or is it a small behavior change where you maybe need 1 or 2 lessons? You figure that out here, and then you rally your troops. You guys ever seen those parts of those movies where they build the team? They go to those folks and they're like, I need you. And the person's like, I can't do it. And they're like, you have to. And then like, I won't. Then they walk away and they come back like 15 minutes later and they're like, I'm in. This is that part of building the training program. When you go across the org and you find the people who you need to recruit. And ideally, they don't do the whole back and forth thing. But ideally, they're just like, all right, cool, sure. But I like those scenes in those movies, so I wanted to talk about them here today. Once you've planned, it's time to build. This is the part where most training programs fall on their faces. People spend way too much time in this stage. They spend 6 months building their ideal, perfect training program, and 6 months later, that stuff that you learned in Assess is irrelevant. Doesn't matter anymore, but good job. It's perfect. It's just too late. The build stage is all about sharing before you're ready. So the neat thing about having a method now is we get to bring tips into it. We get to bring tips and tricks and put them in specific spots of the method so that you can benefit from them. And if you want to pass off your training program to somebody else, they can benefit from it too. When it comes to sharing before you're ready, what that means is spending an hour on your first draft of your lesson and then sharing it out to 5 people who will ultimately be the intended recipients of it. You find some tenured folks on the team, you find some newbies. And you're like, what do you think? What am I missing? What parts aren't relevant here? What parts should I totally delete? What parts have I missed? And then you keep iterating really quickly. And within hours, you're live. We have some clients in here who used to bring big production crews in to do their training programs. Now they build lessons in the airport. That's how to get it done. Once you've built those lessons and those practice scenarios and you've identified how you're going to do those instructor-led trainings, you start the learning process. You make your assignments. I love that you guys are taking notes. I promise this is all on the internet, though. It's totally up to you, though. You do your thing. Learn how you learn. The learning part, make the assignments, let people go through them, and then you add these practice scenarios in. And practice is a big, burgeoning part of our business. Practice is kind of the future, we believe, of team training. We think it's really cool because it is really a way to build psychological safety on a team. Think about telling somebody, all right, here's that new behavior change, now go do it. They're like, I'm not ready yet. I'd like to practice. I'd like to work these muscles a little bit more before you throw me out there and make me do it live. Practice allows people to do that. It allows them to get a sense for where they are across whatever criteria you think matters in that given practice scenario. And then it's the performance. This is doing it live. Ideally, they feel good about it. And we're collecting data as they do it. And when we get through the performance, we reassess and say, how did it go? We had a plan. We had some measures. How did we pull it off? There's some folks in this room who, if I tell you there's a 6-step process, you're going to do every 6 steps whenever you start a new training program. I want you to know you don't have to. I want to give you permission right now. You can break the rules. This is a method that is just meant to be guidance. It's not meant to lock you in. So these little lines just say, it's in the moment, as you learn or as you practice, you see ways that you can update, refresh, do in-the-moment coaching, maybe make a juke to your plan. Do it. Break the mold. But it's nice to have a mold every now and then. If it helps, you can also break this down into training wheels. Don't call them that. That was the one time I get to say that out loud. As soon as we saw these, we were like, it looks like a bike. But we're not going to call them that ever again, so you don't have to either. Okay, so over here, we've got the plan, build, assess stages. This is kind of the managers, the trainers, and the SMEs, and then we've got the teams and the individuals who take the learning, the practicing, performing. If it helps, visualize it this way. But however you visualize it, know that this is the Do Better Work method, and we appreciate your help putting it together. If you would like to engage with the Do Better Work method, we have an assessment you can take on our website. You can go through and figure out how well you're doing the assessments, how well you're doing the planning, how well you're practicing learning all across the board. And if you want to do that, just leslie.com/do better work. This is one element of doing better work. There's a whole lot more elements of doing better work, and we're going to get to them today.